Hey, my name is Mark, and for my day job, I help organizations collaborate around solutions to complex problems. But what I want to talk about today is just me and my brain, and in particular how I discovered that I have a brain. And so that journey of discovery started about 4 years ago when I was diagnosed with OCD, general anxiety disorder, and depression. But in particular, I want to talk about OCD, because my OCD symptoms were relatively severe. So sometimes I had to stay in my house and just watch my stove to make sure that it wouldn't turn on. I had all sorts of compulsive checking behaviors and compulsive washing. OCD completely infiltrated everything in my life. All of my personal relationships, infiltrated my sex life, how I worked out, how I worked, how I studied at school, everything. I was completely swallowed up and crushed by my brain. And so at that point I started to realize, okay, I have a brain and it's not working. So I realized I had to go and get help. So I went, after years of struggling with this, more than a decade, I went and saw a psychologist who specialized in exposure and response prevention therapy, what's known as ERP. And that involves exposing yourself to what makes you anxious and then not responding in a compulsive way. And it's really about cutting out all the behaviors you use to try and cope with, check on, and control anxiety. These are all a lot of very things we think of as normal, things I thought of as part of my personality, but were really making my OCD worse and causing my OCD and really blowing it out and taking over my life. So I cut out those behaviors. This was a fairly long process, but over the duration of this process of cutting out these behaviors, my brain began to change, I changed, my life became much better, and I became friends with my brain. And it really helped me realize that, hey, not only do I have a brain, but brains change. And so I became really curious about my brain, and I started to learn about it and look into it. And one of the first things I quickly realized is that my brain isn't just this single lump of wrinkly material up here. It's actually made up of all sorts of different parts, and those parts are constantly changing in size, and there's sort of this cognitive system up there. Now, part of this cognitive system that's really interesting and relevant to people with anxiety disorders is the amygdala. Now, the amygdala are part of something known as the limbic system. And the limbic system looks like a Romulan warbird, and the amygdala are two bundles of matter on the left and right side of your brain. And often you'll see research looking at how the amygdala change in size, because we don't know what these changes in size mean yet. For instance, we know that conservatives or Republicans have larger right amygdala than the average person. We know that lesbians have a larger right amygdala than heterosexual females, but we know that larger amygdala in general, both left and right, are linked to having more Facebook friends, but also an increased chance of depression and also a likelihood of having autism. So therefore, we know that if you have a large right amygdala, you're a lesbian Mitt Romney who's using your large number of Facebook friends to overcome depression, and you have autism. Okay, so really we don't know why size matters in the brain. What we do know is that size can change very quickly. Researchers at the Massachusetts General Hospital found that 30 minutes of meditation per day for 8 weeks caused the amygdala to shrink. Okay, so no, that's really interesting. We don't know what that shrinkage means, but what we do know is that doing something for 30 minutes a day for 8 weeks changes your brain. And that's really important when it comes to mental health, because think about, what are you doing for 30 minutes a day for probably more than 8 weeks? Right? Whatever you're doing, it's changing your brain. So you start to think, are you doing things that are changing your brain for the better, or is it making your mental health worse? And so this made me realize that mental health is really just like physical health. Right? If you're doing something every day like exercise, your physical health gets better. And so mental health is really the same. What you're doing every day is contributing to your mental health getting better or worse. Now, when it comes to physical health, we recognize you don't wait until you have a heart attack to start eating healthy and taking care of your body. Unfortunately, when it comes to mental health, we still have this illness-first approach to mental health. Really, we need to change that. Right? So we know that 46.4% of Americans are going to meet the criteria for a mental illness in their lifetime. That's a huge number of people, but really it shouldn't be that surprising because we have this illness-first approach to mental health. We don't take care of our brains. We don't take care of our mental health. We all have varying levels of improvable mental health, and if we're not taking care of it, it's getting worse. Right? So really that statistic is even kind of low, because at the end of the day, 100% of people have brains, and 100% of people have mental health. And if they're not taking care of it, it's getting worse. And this made me realize that really zombies care way more about our brains than we do. And we can really learn from zombies, right? They care about our brains. We should also care a lot more about our brains. So suddenly I realized, okay, so I have a brain, my brain changes, and for many decades of my life I'd completely ignored it, and because I ignored my brain, that made my life really crappy. So I said, okay, I'm going to start taking care of my brain, and I'm going to start to tell other people about this, because I wish somebody had told me. As soon as I started to talk about mental illness and mental health, I'd run into people saying, oh, why are you talking about mental health? Aren't you afraid of stigma? And so one thing, because I had an anxiety disorder, part of getting over that anxiety disorder means not responding to irrational fears. And stigma is just an irrational fear, something bad that could happen. So I describe stigma as a squirrel holding a monster mask. So people are scared of it, but if you just run at it and you're open about things, that squirrel runs away. So this is really a big first step. If you're going to start to take care of your mental health, I'd really encourage you as a first step to start to talk about it. Because you very quickly realize that what you think is very unique and that is just your problem is really a problem that lots of other people have. And we really need to start, letting out what's in our brain, because that just creates, we have this cognitive system up here. You can think of it as a cognitive digestive system. And if you got things going in, you gotta have things going out. So really start to take care of your cognitive digestive system. And a great first step is by talking about your mental health, being open about your mental health. I know a lot of people talk about stigma and they say, oh, you have to worry about stigma, but we create mental health stigma by not talking about it. So a fantastic first step, if you're gonna start taking care of your mental health, recognizing that you do have mental health, that if you're not taking care of it, it's gonna get worse. So start talking about your mental health, start taking care of your mental health, because everybody has a brain. So everybody needs to take care of their mental health.